So, Leonie, it's just great to have this chance to say a little bit about ourselves, say a little bit about the program. And we've now been delivering this program for 4 years. I think it's been a fascinating journey. And maybe what we do is just start off by saying a little bit about ourselves, and then we get into why it's relevant in the current world of mindfulness in the workplace. So, shall I just start?
Yes, that would be great.
Great, lovely. So my background is in media. I worked in television and radio production, which I loved. And it was there that I became very interested in resilience. And I then started studying psychology, worked at the University of Surrey in Guildford for 10 years once I'd qualified, and started offering mindfulness to staff and then students. And I could see the benefit and thought that this would be hugely relevant in a workplace setting. And this was 2011, before well-being had become so center stage. Set up my own consultancy, have worked with lots of different sectors, law, banking, media, and still do. And I think that's been really helpful as a background to draw upon as we've worked with a global group of people wanting to deliver in the workplace. Do you want to say a little bit about you and your old journey to being in this place?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in management consulting. I worked for Ernst & Young and a couple of other consultancies for over 10 years as a corporate change manager. And during that time was fortunate to be involved in meaningful projects such as improving the patient experience in the NHS and making the UK railway safer and fit for the future. And it was during those years that I started practicing mindfulness to cope better with the intensity of the work. And then I quickly trained to become a mindfulness teacher. And then won the support of my firm's DEI leadership team, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion leadership team, to set up a firm-funded mindfulness employee network to support our inclusion agenda by teaching our leaders and senior professionals relevant skills such as self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy, amongst others. And this was back in 2015, and actually turned out to be fairly groundbreaking work back then. And we were recognized with an award by the All-Party Parliamentary Group for mindfulness in the UK, for the leadership and innovation in the field. And during this time as mindfulness chair, I was fortunate to be able to teach leaders and senior colleagues across the globe, from London to Lisbon and from Sydney to Singapore. And I also gained experience in commissioning external providers to offer workshops and trainings. So I've also seen that side of things, how organizations go about contracting with external mindfulness teachers. For the past 5 years, I've been self-employed as a mindfulness teacher, been working closely with the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation, also as a teacher trainer. And I supervise people, mindfulness teachers interested in teaching in the workplace, to adapt their curriculum, to adapt their teaching style, their delivery methods to resonate with busy, often highly analytical professionals and those in leadership positions. In addition to my work at the OMF, I have a private coaching practice where I use mindfulness and other forms of mental training to coach professionals in how to step out of their comfort zone with more confidence and to achieve career goals that really matter to them. And I've been thinking about, you said, Susan, we've been teaching this for over 4 years now. And I've been thinking about why am I still passionate about this? Because I really am a real believer in this program. And I think it's because of the real ripples I've seen. So not only does this benefit mindfulness teachers, but also I've seen it benefit those who they're reaching through their mindfulness training. who are learning potentially life-transforming skills, becoming more resilient, becoming more purpose-driven, becoming happier. And so that's what I really love about this program, is the real impact that it's having, us training up mindfulness teachers to be ready and confident to take this to the workplace. Now, Susan, let's get into some of the other questions. And it'd be great if you could say a little bit about how the landscape has changed for workplace mindfulness teachers in the last few years. And what does that mean for workplace mindfulness teachers? What do they need to look out for?
Yeah, great question. It's fascinating because in 2011, when I would first go into organizations and ask who'd heard of mindfulness, one or two hands would go up. Now, pretty much, well, in the UK, most people have some sense of it. So it's really interesting. And I think another change in our landscape is that we are delivering more and more globally. So in some parts of the world, there's quite a mature market. In other areas, it's emerging and developing. And I think we've really seen that with our participants, as well as the trainings that you and I are involved in organizations. I think in some areas, it's become increasingly competitive for mindfulness trainers. So really helpful for them to understand positioning, branding, what makes you unique, what experience do you draw upon. And when we look at the pace of change, think of the pandemic and the impact that that's had. When we first started delivering this training, it was just as the pandemic, was we were all navigating that. I think people have become increasingly sedentary. How do you work with that? People are increasingly connected, but seldom to themselves. The pressure's on, more and more is being asked of people. So it's how do we support trainers, teachers, to connect well with the person commissioning the training? And then how do they then work with a curricula that's going to land well for participants? I think that we live with a lot of fear and anxiety. So as we know, anxiety levels are going up. How does a mindfulness trainer navigate this skillfully? So I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on how you feel the training really supports those who come along to deliver well in the workplace.
Yeah. So share a slide with you, because you and I, did a little bit of analysis and thought about what we have learned in the past 4 years. And in those 4 years, we have trained nearly 100 mindfulness teachers to establish themselves in the workplace. And we've given some thought to what are the essential skills that you need to successfully establish yourself in the workplace. And these are the 5 skills that we think are really key. This is understanding the organizational context and culture, understanding the commissioner service provider relationship. And then in this, as you mentioned, increasingly mature and competitive well-being and mindfulness market, what we found is that workplace teachers who manage to establish themselves, they tend to be more strategic now about the positioning, more strategic about their brand building, and they tend to have what we call a strategic offering. And let me say a little bit more about each of them and how we address those skills in our program. And I'll start with the first 2. So the organizational context and culture, and the commissioner service provider relationship. And so, when mindfulness teachers are teaching mindfulness in a public setting, then there is the mindfulness teacher, you, and there are the participants, the course participants. And the mindfulness teacher training that all our teachers who are working with have completed has readied them to teach 8-week courses in this context. And it's helped them develop key skills such as embodying mindfulness, guiding practices, doing inquiry, holding the group. And all of these skills are key in the workplace as well. But we know that the participants on the Teaching Mindfulness in the Workplace program, they have these skills. So we focus on different skills, because when you teach in the workplace, there is an additional player here in this Venn diagram, and this is the organization. And that completely changes the dynamics, because now the participants are also employees of the organization. So there is an employee-employer relationship. And also you, the mindfulness teacher, has a relationship with the organization. And we call that the commissioner service provider relationship, where the organization is the commissioner, the mindfulness teacher is the service provider. And if you want to be successful in this setting, then you need to have these additional skills listed here. The workplace context and culture skills, what's that about? That is about understanding the impact that an organization's culture, the organization's hierarchies, power dynamics, the workload have on your course participants and on how they show up to your training. And it's about how you adapt your curriculum, your delivery methods, and your teaching style to meet those needs. So, for example, how you adapt your teaching to tight schedules, how you help participants feel psychologically safe when they attend a training in the workplace, and how you increase engagement and participation rates in these busy settings where people have lots on. And then the second skill set is that commissioner service provider skill set. And this is about understanding the organization's needs, the commissioner's needs, their intentions for wanting to bring mindfulness to the organization, and also what barriers they might be faced with, which might be a lack of leadership support. We sometimes see that, or limited budgets. We see that as well. And this is about knowing how to elicit that information from the organization in a way that builds the relationship, that builds trust. And it's about knowing how to adapt your positioning, your brand, your services, your language to those needs. So these are two of the five essential workplace skills that we found separate mindfulness teachers who are frequently booked from those who have a more difficult time building a client base in the workplace. And in the Teaching in the Workplace program, we have a module dedicated to context and culture, and we have a module dedicated to building client relationships and having intentional conversations with clients. And so moving us on to the next point, which is about positioning. As you mentioned, Susan, we are now in this much more competitive and crowded well-being and mindfulness market. And what we found is that mindfulness teachers need to have a clearly defined niche. They need to be an expert in something. And I'm saying something and not everything. Yeah, and they also, number 4, they also need to have a personal brand that sets them apart from others in this space, and that helps them to attract the clients who want the services that they are offering. And what we found is that mindfulness teachers often struggle with positioning and brand building, sometimes because they say they just don't know how to do it. Sometimes because they're worried that if they're choosing a niche, then they might be losing out on some other work. And sometimes because they say they feel uncomfortable with becoming visible and promoting themselves, and that they don't know how to do it in a way that feels authentic and congruent with their values. So in the Teaching in the Workplace program, we have dedicated a good amount of time to addressing these issues. We have one module dedicated to helping people choose their positioning based on their past experience, their interests, their passions. And we have two modules on brand building and becoming more visible. One module which is geared towards beginners, and then another module which teaches more advanced strategies. And then let's move on to the final skill set, which we call building a strategic offering. Now, and what we're finding is that many mindfulness teachers, what they do is they offer an introduction session, typically followed by a 6-week course or maybe an 8-week course. Now, the problem with this approach is that their engagements tend to be short-lived, and the impact they have on employees' well-being, resilience, or other key metrics tends to be limited, and often the benefits evaporate quickly. And they're constantly in search of new clients, which, we know finding a new client takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And what we found is that mindfulness teachers who have returning clients, and as a result have a more steady income stream, they tend to have what we call a strategic offering. So they tend to think about the end-to-end experience they are providing, from raising awareness about mindfulness, introducing mindfulness, teaching mindfulness, all the way through to helping people adopt mindfulness practice, embed it in the organization, and scale it up. And that then means that they have a much greater impact. They're much more often seen as an important partner by their client contacts. And so they tend to benefit much more from repeat business and from word of mouth. So those are the 5 essential skills that we have highlighted, Susan, aren't they?
Absolutely. Beautifully described, Leonie. Thank you. Yeah, I think what's so interesting is as this landscape's changed and evolved, so too has our program. And we really do what we can to support people in an ever-changing world. And I think one of the beauties, as well as the content, the sessions, is this coming together of people from all different parts of the world, grappling with all sorts of different issues and realizing how there's some things that are common, but then there's some things that are unique. And how do we work with that? Anything more you want to say on how we work? Okay, so what we'd love to do is invite you to come along to our information session on the 15th of January. And then you might even consider signing up for the program, which starts on the 21st of February. And we would love to have the opportunity to discuss this further with you. So thank you for your time, and we hope our paths cross again. And Leonie, look forward to chatting soon.
Lovely to chat to you as always, Susan. Talk to you soon.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye.